Illari is finally in Overwatch 2, and this solar-powered support is hoping to shine in a metagame that has become a little bit locked in recently. So can Overwatch 2's newest support cut it with Kiriko, Sojourn and Junker Queen and jump straight into the meta on her release? Or is she doomed to be left in obscurity like Lifeweaver? Let's take a look at all of her abilities, her strengths and weaknesses, and how she might fit into a modern meta comp. So first up, here are her abilities. You can see them on screen now, and we're going to kick things off with their solar rifle, which fires off long-range damaging bolts on primary and triggers a medium-range healing beam that consumes solar energy on secondary fire. Her primary fire is an auto-charging rifle, and it hits pretty hard, all things considered. A body shot with the rifle will deal 75 damage, and if you land a headshot, as far as we can tell from our experience with her, you'll be dishing out about 112.5 damage on a crit. So up against another 200 HP hero, a body shot and headshot isn't going to cut it. You'll need a couple more hits to confirm a kill in that situation. Her secondary fire is a healing beam that honestly looks very decent. The healing per second genuinely looks like it could be up there with the best in the game, and the ult charge you gain from each successive heal looks pretty tasty as well. There are some limitations on how much you can use it. Her solar power works a little bit like Moira's healing in that you have a finite resource you need to manage, but Illari's doesn't need you to deal damage to replenish it quickly, it does it on its own. And provided you don't let it fall below 0 and keep the tap burst heals strong, the recharge time on it looks fairly forgiving. But the real bulk of her healing utility is a little later in her kit, and it turns Illari into a pretty big issue for enemies. But we'll get to that in a minute. Her ability on shift key is Outburst. This launches you in the direction you're travelling and knocks back any enemies within range of it. You can also get a decent amount of height by pressing jump while the ability triggers, which was incredibly useful for getting out of sticky situations and escape more dangerous heroes or team fights that weren't going our way to regroup. The knockback effect isn't super powerful, but it is enough to knock heroes off the map from this point on the training arena, so that should give you a good idea of what we're working with. You're not really going to be using it to get boop kills like Lucio, it's more of a tool to help keep you away from the threats that love to target the support backline. Combined with her other abilities, Illari is packing some decent survivability baked right into her kit, and if you watch here, her verticality goes way higher than you might think, so keep that in mind if you're trying to get out of dodge quickly. Now, we get to probably the most powerful part of Illari's kit, healing Pylon. Essentially, this sends out a healing turret, similar to Symmetra's, that will stick to any surface you place it on and heal any allies it can reach within range. The healing is functionally unlimited and will continuously proc as long as there are allies in the area to receive the healing, and as you can see, the range on it is actually pretty decent. And even if your allies move on, you can simply destroy the Pylon and redeploy it where it's more strategically sound for you. So you're never locked into one area once the cooldown is cleared. The Pylon heals for 40 HP per tick, and while it does seem to need line of sight to trigger on allies, how it interprets line of sight seems to be really quite forgiving, especially around corners. So you could place it on a pillar, making it really hard for enemies to combat it, and still receive healing in a variety of positions around it. In the right situations, combined with Illari's healing beam, this is going to be incredibly strong and might just be one of the best HPS rates Overwatch has ever seen. The healing turret has 150 HP, so nothing to be sniffed at, and while it can obviously be destroyed with some focused fire, it's rarely going to go down in one hit, which means your team can consistently heal even if Illari is briefly taken out of the fight, provided that they can defend the space it's in. Honestly, it seems so powerful even on its own, and is going to be an absolute nightmare to deal with. Just look at some of the angles you can get so that the healing Pylon will work, and how difficult it will be to deal with. Like, what sort of chance have you got here? There are going to be so many strategic angles you'll be able to find, which will give the enemy team pretty much no chance to take it out without putting themselves in serious danger. Once this gets into the hands of actually competent players, expect there to be some chat around this ability. In our opinion, it needs a little bit less health. Making it a one and done like Symmetra's turret would at least give teams playing against it some decent outs, especially considering the ridiculous angles you can get it to pop off with. Which leads us finally to Illari's ultimate ability, Captive Sun. This fires off an explosive ball of energy that slows enemies and explodes after they take significant damage. Damage that can be procced by both you and, we think, ally damage, although neither Yiska or me were totally sure on that, but it seems to. Think a little of Sigma's ult combined with a bit of Discord and you're in the right area. This is probably one of the harder abilities to get true value out of, since it not only requires decent aim, but also some coordinated attack from your teammates. You can only hit one target, so you'll need to land the ult shot and make sure you're landing follow-up hits to get maximum value out of that explosion, which, to be fair, should be slightly easier thanks to the slow effect it inflicts. As you can see in the video, it deals significant damage to anything you manage to land a couple of hits on, knocking a huge chunk off the 700 HP Roadhog has, so anything that isn't a tank, or a tank that's already taken a little bit of damage, is going to have a bad time with it. It'll be a great ult to punish overly aggressive or out of position tanks and DPS, since the slow will make it harder for them to escape, and the damage output can melt them if you coordinate as a squad and land those headshots. Rounding off her kit, Illari also has your classic support passive of healing over time as well. So, What are the chances of Illari making it big in the metagame and appearing at the top level of the Overwatch League? Well, we're gonna go bold on this one with our prediction. Between me and Yiska, we reckon this solar-powered support has around a 70% chance of seeing active play almost immediately after she becomes available. She looks incredibly strong in her current state, and while it is hard to get a proper read on the metagame right now with so many balance changes, Illari would probably slide right into the Ana slot of the comps currently dominating the high levels. Her ult definitely isn't quite as strong, but being able to stack a massive amount of damage and slow down enemies causing you problems is decent enough, and will basically mark whoever you hit with it for death, provided that your team double down on them. Any stray tanks or flanking DPS could at any time get melted, so the key is that you want to make sure you win any fight you use her ult in, otherwise it's pretty much dead on trigger. Her burst healing combined with the healing Pylon and Outburst means she has possibly the highest potential healing per second in the game if it's done right, and her survivability is pretty decent too, with plenty of potential outs in the pushback and verticality you can get off Outburst, and again, her healing Pylon will keep her and her team sustained in more lengthy fights. If there's one potentially glaring weakness, it's that Illari is a little susceptible to just being dove on and bullied out of the game. Her Outburst does give her some decent mobility though, and with the knockback in the hands of seasoned pros, she may not actually be as weak to dive as it looks. It's hard to say for sure, and as always, we reserve the right to be 100% wrong on this, but Illari looks more likely to be bothering the metagame of Overwatch 2 than Lifeweaver ever did. So don't sleep in on Illari. A new Overwatch 2 dawn might be about to break. And speaking of Lifeweaver, have you ever wondered why he's got such a stupidly high win rate in the Overwatch League? If you have, check out this video here.